Hello. Hello and welcome to astromantics, the show where I talk about wherever the fuck I want, which tends to be all things sexy, intimate. That's my favorite thing to talk about. And today I have a very sexy lady with me. First of all, Mary Piercy. Hello, sexy lady.
Hello. Thank you.
And Jamie Love. Hi, sexy lady.
Well, hello. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to get my chart read.
Oh my God. I'm so excited to talk about your chart, like super excited. For everyone, I met Jessie at Broadcast, which is a group I've talked about many times on here, which is like, I describe it as like anyone who describes themselves as feminine, right? I call it the divine feminine group because that's what we're kind of going for there, right? Diving into all things divine and feminine.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I love that place. And Jessie is
I'm not Jessie. You just call me
not
Jessie.
Jessie, Jamie. I keep getting it confused because Jessie is somebody else that
Jessie's
also,
cool.
yeah, Jessie's way cool, right? I mean, if I'm going to confuse you with anyone, right? The name Jessie is not bad.
Yeah.
I don't know why I keep doing that. Keep correcting me.
Okay.
But
Well,
yeah, no.
I think it's because it's like similar, like with the J, but then also it's like Jessie Fresh, Jamie Love. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
they remind me of each other. I wonder if that's happened. It's almost like dyslexia in your brain where you're like, two things are similar and I'm gonna interchange them on accident.
Totally real. And Mercury is going to go into retrograde here.
Oh yeah, and we just started the shadow period for it.
Yeah. Anyway, it's all good. It's all good.
It's all good.
Yes. But Jamie, you're the new like sort of leader director, right? A group of leaders, one of probably many directors and leaders of Sex Positive Portland, right?
Yeah, I am the executive director. So we also have a board, we have volunteers, we have other directors. But I kind of set the tone of like how we fulfill the mission of sex positivity in the Portland area. Like, how do we let people know what we're up to? How do we keep safety in the mix? How do we make sure it's queer inclusive and also an accessible space for our BIPOC folks? So I'm the person who gets to be the public face.
Oh, it's perfect. And Sex Positive Portland was the first place that my husband and I went when we moved to Portland back in 2014. That's when we, for the first time, went to Sex Positive. And we would join book clubs, sapiosexual book club, right? That's where I first learned about that term even, right? My husband at that time had not ever experimented with his bisexuality. And then he saw other men coming out as bisexual and how other partners, right? Husbands and wives, people who are in sort of more like the anchor, relationship type, nesting relationship. I learned all my terms from Sex Positive Portland. And it helped me to realize what I was and what I was not and to feel sort of safe. I mean, my favorite thing that Sex Positive taught me was, thank you for taking care of yourself.
Yes.
That response to when somebody's wanting to engage with you in a sexual manner, if you are like, for whatever reason, not right now, or maybe you're not the person or whatever, right? To say, have the response be back to you. Thank you for taking care of yourself.
Yeah, I've taken that outside of just sexual connotation because there's so many times in life where and I struggle with this because, it's why I'm doing it, is like anytime someone is asking for a thing, do you have time for a quick chat? Can we check in about this and that? Do you want to eat this thing? And just being like, I want to feel like I can say no. So all of my friends are like now trained to be like, I love when you say no, or hit back with ooh, I need more information so I can find my yes. Because so often people are like, oh, it has to be a yes and it's weird to say no. And I absolutely love being in a culture where no is on the table at all times and we can really, really honor each other's boundaries.
I fucking adore that as well, right? As a person who struggles to say no. And So what sex positive does is it helps you to find words to describe, right? I love the thing that you just said, which is I need more information to help me find my yes.
Yeah, and it's also this thing of like we live in a world where when you're out in this the normal world,
The
we
wild.
live in a culture of turning the no into a yes because we live in a sales culture
Mhm.
where it's like, oh, or we're trained to be coy and indirect with each other. So you meet cool people who speak the same language that you do. So in this community, like you're safe to say no. So you know they're not gonna blow up or be like, why? Why are you saying no to me? Are you rejecting me? So we created this culture around it. And that's what's great about community.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
I loved it. I'm really, and then COVID hit, and then of course no one was going, and then everything kind of was like, ugh, you know.
Yeah, I am the 4th executive director of SPP. Gabriela Cordova, of course, started it.
Yeah.
Dr. Evelyn Dacker took over, who's also a medical doctor and runs her own business. So when COVID hit, she was like, I gotta do my work thing.
Yeah.
And somehow we stuck together with Avery Dean at the helm. And now it's me. It's the Jamie Love era of SPP. And whoever comes after me, I'm sure will be brilliant.
Well, you are super well equipped to do this. And we're going to look at your chart now because I'd love to tell you just how equipped you are to do this. All right.
I
So
also want to just mention secondarily, I also run as executive director 501c3 that is Sex Positive World. So I actually am a leader of leaders, which will make sense when we look at my chart. Starting Sex Positive Seattle, helping LA through a leadership transition, and starting chapters all over the world. We're actually looking at Singapore and I believe Australia right now. So like it's bigger than just Portland. But Portland is like where I am and like my jam right now.
Me too. It's my jam too. I feel the jamminess. So this is you. This is your chart.
Yep.
This.
I first got into astrology in 2021, and I had always just been like, this Libra thing kind of makes sense. I am very into like equity and equality and justice.
Yeah.
But like, what about all these other parts? And then I found out all the Scorpios in here, and I was like, oh, now I get it.
That's it. And then I know, right? There's so much. Libras also tend to be the least straight of the zodiac because they see beauty in so many bodies and body types, and and there's this equity, right? And they're appreciators of beauty, right? So I call them, we have found that people who have Libra in certain spots of their chart tend to be less straight than other people. Would you say that rings true for you as well?
I think it does. I mean, I was socialized straight because I was socialized Christian, and now much later in life, I'm very attracted in particular to non-binary and trans folks.
Yeah.
And part of what I do in Sex Positive is hold space for sexy things to happen.
Yes.
I call it my voyeurism streak, and I think that's also what you're describing. Like, I love to watch people in their yum and hold that space of like, oh, are we all good? So,
oh my God. I love your words. Your wording is brilliant. And so one, you have a couple things pop in here. The first thing that I noticed was one, holy shit, Scorpio, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you don't get this much Scorpio in an angular house without growing up feeling like you had to hide or be secretive about your body, your soul, the things that you were interested in, right? It does tell me automatically that some problematic things happened to you growing up. That does tell me that immediately. You don't get Scorpio without being brave, right?
Yeah.
Without being, it's brilliant and beautiful, but you have learned how to use sort of what things maybe were meant for harm. You have harnessed the ability to look directly at the taboo, right? All the things that people want to hide. It's enabled you to look directly at it in the face and talk right to it, right?
Yeah. Oh, you're absolutely speaking to it. Like I was just saying about being raised in a Christian household. We didn't talk about sex. We didn't talk about masturbation. I have 4 older sisters, so I also grew up in a house with a lot of personalities and patriarchy from the church and feminism from the sisters being like, this is bullshit. So just like this mishmash of words. I'm the worlds. I am the only one of us who is queer and gender queer and pansexual.
Yeah.
And yes, I am a loud and proud slut now. Both of my parents have blocked me on social media, and that's fine because I can't not be who I am now.
Right.
Absolutely, I had to hide those things, and I'm really fortunate that I had so many different personalities in the house. So I had like these little places to have secrets and trust.
Yes. I have a little brother that I do the same thing with. And so you have a 12th house son. This tells me for certain that when you were growing up, your vitality was repressed because it's in a 12th house of repression. And it's in Libra, the least straight sign, right? So definitely not able to be the sun about how you felt about relationships.
Yeah.
Yes. Scorpio moon also tells me mother and father did this. We're co-agreeing on the repression sort of aspect of it. I have a 12th house Venus, which is a repressed attraction, right? Mine was you have to hide your attraction, right? It's massively a thing that if in my world, if I was perceived as attractive at church, it somehow gave license to the other males to approach me, and I felt like I couldn't say no, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think one of my experiences early on was like having to wear a dress and oh my God, tights and hairspray and makeup. And I'm a high sensitivity person. I cope with it very, very well. But like it was torturous to have to dress in that gender role when I was like, the boys get to wear these like loose fitting normal clothes and they wear tennis shoes and I have to wear heels. Like, why is my whole life discomfort? My older sisters, they were like, hell yes, but those are the rules, so you have to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I love here though is that you do have a Jupiter in Pisces. This is excellent. Right. And it's in the 5th house of sex for fun and sex for pleasure. So immediately this tells me you're a teacher of sex for fun and sex for pleasure. Right.
Yes.
And a preacher for it. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not enough play and people have so much tightness. And I love letting people kind of let that tightness go and go, oh, and I was still honored. And maybe I want more of this. That's one of my favorite. Oh, I just got tingles just saying that. I love seeing that transformation in others. Like it's self-generated, but to hold the space for them to go on that path is just, it just makes me so happy.
Yeah. I have a Venus in Pisces and I have similar chills when I see people like embracing sort of their authentic self and coming out of this tight space of fear, I love that. The other thing here too is Scorpio. So Scorpio rules the genitals. Hello, Scorpio 1st house. With the moon here, that's your inner world too, right? So you have a double Mars ruled chart, same as me, but mine's Aries. I have a moon and rising in Aries, a Mars ruled sign, and you have it in Scorpio, but the sexier, sort of stealthier ruled sign, right? The ninja Mars, if you will.
Yeah, well, and Scorpio gets associated with Pluto, because I think that updated over time, but they're both like fiery, burn your house down, rage.
Yes. Mary and I usually think of them as co-rulers, right? Pluto is the new kid on the block, but still very true. Absolutely resonates, I think. Yeah. And then Mars is the OG Hellenistic, right?
Yeah, I really resonated with Persephone when I started reading about that, who's one of like the most empowered of that whole pantheon from Greek and Roman.
Yeah.
Because she's a co-ruler of hell and she chooses to go back. Like she's like a really fucking awesome. Can I say that?
Yeah, you can.
She's a really fucking awesome archetype to look up to, and I found a lot of power in associating with her.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that too, because that would be kind of like I go with my mom who doesn't want to be a part of Hades and is actually pissed at that, right?
Yeah.
But then, yeah, right. So above is where I've got to be with my family, and below is where I get to be me, almost, right? Or
yeah,
right.
and this thing too, even of like Demeter, like allowing the earth to die and being like, if I don't show up for that, then everybody suffers. So Persephone also is very giving to make sure that the earth is cared for.
Right. Core, I think was one of her names too, which means destroyer. Right.
Yeah, and that's also just a huge theme, like destruction, rebirth, death. And for a long time I tried to be like, no, don't worry about the death part. Now I'm like, you can't be a phoenix if you don't die.
That's right. You got to make way.
Things.
No, I love that. And so so Pluto, right, is here in that first house, which gives you that rulership, right? That means that you get to be your own person. It kind of gives you a power there. And then Mars as a like co-ruler, ancient ruler, you have Mars exalted in the sign of Capricorn, which gives structure. So you show up and give structure to taboo subjects.
Yeah, you're describing my job.
Yes, I'm describing what I'm seeing in your chart, right?
Yeah. That's absolutely because Sex Positive Portland, we're doing something new. We're not only doing sex positivity in that, like, we're breaking down sex to also like to be bigger than penetration, right?
Yes.
To say, like, what if we just do cuddles? What if we just do massage? What if we just learn a skill?
Mhm.
And this idea, like, you go to an orgy and it's a pile of bodies and there is no consent, is this cultural story. And here I am normalizing it, saying no.
Yeah.
Consent forward, consent first. We go slow.
Yes.
And absolutely bringing structure to it and sustainability also, because the founders had a lot more free time, a little older. And I went, well, when I quit, then what? This has to be going. And then on top of that, with that is let's make sure we're queer inclusive. Let's make sure we're doing the anti-racism work, that we're making space for folks that we maybe didn't think about before, and like really being a champion for that, using my privilege. And I'm seeing that as you're describing this, like, need to bring structure and put those things in place. Absolutely.
Right. Exactly. And you will definitely leave a legacy that helps with that, right? That structures.
That's my goal.
Yes. And we have an 8th house Gemini, and then Mars is in a 3rd house, who is all about communication and things like that. So communicating then about Phoenix moments, communicating about taboo subjects, deep subjects. 8th house gives Scorpio, right? It gives that vibe with that house. So talking about it and talking about woundedness is another thing we've got going on here for you. Right. It also tells me that you experience some woundedness in the area of sex, like committed sex, if you will, merged, right? That merged.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think we've talked about some of those things. Also, like coming out of the household I was in, I ended up in an abusive relationship, and it starts with the isolation and then it gets emotional. And it did turn into physical abuse. And that came from that commitment place. And then just like having a lifetime where it was like, well, if it's not committed, it's not legitimate.
Right.
And finding my voice and saying, my non-committed relationships are legitimate and I get a lot out of them. And there's more than one way to do this. It's just, we didn't have language for it before. And really, like, again, being a champion of it. And here I am talking about it, that's like, it's something that I went through was, the shame of it, the going back to my family of origin. Like, thankfully I had people to go back to. And then it's that thing of Pluto, right? Like, Pluto burns your house down because you didn't build it right the first time, where I went,
yeah.
And then who am I? And that's about a year later is when I found Sex Positive Los Angeles, and they talked about this structured sex positive community where we could be loud and proud. And I had my mind blown. I got obsessed, and here I am now running the show.
Oh, I love it. Thank you for doing this work.
I could not do it.
I know, right? Well, your charts like screams does this, right? But how wonderful. You know what I mean? Like, I definitely love hearing stories of bravery. You know, you come from one place and then, you know, bloom. And thank you for being willing to do the work to allow the death sort of those problematic relationships in the past, right? And to be willing to become a phoenix. You know, that's no small task. I know you can talk about it like, oh, you know, that's just what happened, but damn, that's a lot.
It is a lot. And you know, and I try to be loud and proud about it because unfortunately the story of abuse and religious trauma and finding my voice and finding my own connection to the divine that doesn't necessarily fit into the story I was told as a child has been so important to my path, because a lot of people find us and they feel like they're the black sheep and no one will love them, or I'm queer, therefore I'm dirty. Right. And to really make space to say, you know, it's okay, and be able to share my stories. There's a saying in teaching that says, teach from your wounds, not from your scars. And I tell y'all, I got a lot of scars to teach from. Like, you know, like talking about the abuse, like that was a 5.5 year long relationship. There are things about that relationship and that partner I am still in love with. Right. There are parts of that I still very, very much love. A lot of bad things happen. I don't talk to this person. Right. Like for safety and all the pieces, but like integrating the fact that someone may have broken your boundaries, abused you, threatened your life, and there are things about them that you loved and that were helpful. Like, go to therapy. Therapy's great.
No, that's brilliant. And that is exactly, I think that's what I think of as like, there are parts, I do the same thing with Christianity in a way, right? Yeah. There was this thing that was like repressive and abusive, like the people in it, right? But then there were also things that I'm like, damn, I love the idea of unconditional love, right? I love the idea of setting people free, right? And you know, making people feel like there's nothing you can do to make me not love you, right? Even if, you know.
I still love the example of Jesus and how he is portrayed as somebody who says, let me be your friend. Let me tell you a story. Don't be judging people. Right. I find it sickening how the Bible was put together and how much patriarchy was put into it. I do not like the work of Paul. I find it horrific. So I go with the words of the actual prophet and say, you know, this person was far more mysterious than the basic lessons I was taught. Like there's a story of Jesus, you know, Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father, God, without me. And Christians interpret that to mean Jesus is the shit. Right. And if you don't make it all about Jesus, you fucked. And I went, no. Jesus was saying, be like me, be friends, accept them where they are, love them, feed them, and don't be judgy.
Clothe them. Yeah. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. Those are the things that were important. Not, do you love me?
So don't be other people. Love me. So like, you better not be yourself anymore. Like, never had that conversation. Well, sorry, you're a sex worker. You better stop doing that if you want to follow me. He was like, no, come along, sex worker. That's fine.
In fact, that's who Jesus hung out with. That's why Pharisees and Sadducees were like, oh, this guy is messed up. He's hanging around with drunkards and prostitutes, right? Like, that's who we hung out with. So if you're hanging out with those people, congratulations.
I sure do. They're great people.
Yeah. Amazing. Healers. I was hanging out with Erica, you know, Erica from Broadcast, right?
Yeah.
I had my first mentoring session yesterday with her. She's mentoring me on how to be a pleasure dom. So I'm like, and it's all about making a safe space and healing and a place to be undone, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I don't meet many people who have mentors because I'm one of the few people I know with a mentor. Karen Harry, who is like secretary to the board of Sex Positive World. When I met her, January 2020, I met her before that, but January 2020, I was on the Sex Positive World Hawaii vacation, 7 days on Maui. You know, we start with cuddles and massage, and it turns into a party week. But we also like go snorkeling and see turtles.
Right.
So it's not just like all play all the time. You really like get heartfelt connections with people. And at the end of the week, I was looking her in the eyes and I go, I want to be you.
Yes.
All of this. I want to be on these vacations holding this space. And she's still my mentor. And, you know, without her love and encouragement, I wouldn't be doing what I am now because she pushed me to do the fundraising part. And I tell you all, like, asking people for money to do your passion is really fucking hard.
So hard. I was a missionary actually for years. So
Wow.
I had to do that and I hated it. And Mary's a fellow Scorp Rising. You want to say some of the stuff that you see, Mary? That was my first thought was, oh, damn, I wonder what Mary's take, who has a Pluto and Venus in the first as well.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't have a moon there. Right.
Yeah.
That's different. And then you have Venus and rising like right on top of each other. Like body and Venus are one, you know?
Yes.
And so I think that's kind of cool in Scorpio, like to, I don't know, to be like your body's merged with connections and love and beauty, right? I know mine's there, but it's not as closely intertwined, right?
Right.
And, but then looking at your resources, right? The 8th and the 2nd house, we have the signs are the same, right? But what we have in there is so different. I have like my sun in Sag and you have like Saturn here, right? And so it's interesting the way that you're making money. There's these international connections that you're talking about, right? Sagittarius, honesty, like,
Oh.
but with humor, right? I've seen that already. And that's living in your life's purpose there. I was curious what your thoughts were on Lilith, because you have your wounds right on. I mean, not as close as your Venus and rising, but pretty close. You've got Black Moon Lilith and Chiron, right? Which is both how we're wounded and how we heal.
Yeah, it's like Chiron's the wounded healer, but I've always heard Lilith is kind of like your like raging bitch energy. How would you describe Lilith? Because I'm less familiar with Lilith.
Yeah.
Oh, Lacey tells it so good.
Lilith is the place in our chart where we feel like an outcast. So for you, you feel like if you were to speak about your wounds, especially sexual wounds, that in regular society, it would make you feel like an outcast. You would be excommunicated from the Garden of Eden, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those are absolutely related. I mentioned earlier, like my parents have blocked me on social media. Like even when I talk about this stuff, I've invited people to family members and so on. It's very much like it's black sheep territory for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I have some sisters who have come to classes who really like know my life, but most of like my family of origin, like it's I think it's pretty like in the shame category, but it's also in the don't ask, don't tell category. And I want to respect their consent and what they want to know, because I am in the space of taboo-ness. So I always approach people with like, because the question comes up, what's your job?
Yeah.
I'm the executive director of a nonprofit called Sex Positive World, and one of its chapters, Sex Positive Portland. Teach consent and boundaries, including touch, like cuddles and massage and other things. Yeah. And then I stop. I don't mention sex. I don't mention any of the other stuff, because just hearing the words sex positive can trigger people into word vomiting all their sex trauma. So I'm very careful about how I communicate, because I know, you can absolutely be ostracized. Or I've approached people even at Sanctuary who are just like, well, I don't know. It's so crazy. Like, what is this thing? And really having to like hold space for the taboo-ness and be like, it's not as scary as it sounds. It's not for everybody, and that's okay. And I understand if you don't want to talk to me, that's fine too.
Yeah. I totally get all of that. My mother is very conservative Christian and is the type to tell me that I'm going to hell, right? And I'm an astrologer, and my favorite topic is sex and intimacy, right? So it's also a don't ask, don't tell, right? It's also a challenging place to be in, you know, where you're like, oh gosh, you know.
And that speaks to like some of my work in therapy right now, and that it's not my responsibility to take at this point in my life, or to care more about her feelings than mine, because that is part of my story also, you know, like being the grown up at a very young age in my family system, not just me, my sisters too, like we're all kind of therapeutically talking each other through it as we're looking at our parents retiring, and like, how are we handling this, and how are we doing this as sisters, and also the work of like, you know, don't take care of everybody, take care of the people who want the caretaking.
Yes. Boy, that's hard though sometimes, right? Because like a 12th house, anything, it's serve or suffer, right? It's the house of serve or suffer.
Yeah.
So to be able, Libra, right? You're describing that balance of, you know, do you want me to serve you? No? Okay, right? Like,
and then you have north or south node there. Yeah. So it would be like lifetimes of putting other people's needs before your own, right?
Oh yeah.
Peacekeeping and making sure things are okay for everybody before you think about, and like now you have what you're being asked in this life is to lean more into the Aries.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, and it's I hadn't heard it said like that before, with the Venus and rising on top of each other, because integrity is such a huge piece, and that comes to the Aries-ness of the work of this life, is like being in my authenticness. Because sometimes as facilitators, there's this idea of like, well, I'm in front of the room, so even if I'm having a crappy day, I need to be willing to let people touch me, or I have to be willing to go above and beyond. And my words to those folks is like, I've done that. Don't do that. It's very bad. If you're in a space where you don't want touch, you need to be honoring the fact that you do not want to be touched. And tell people no, because this is the culture where we honor each other's sovereignty. Yeah. And that's a huge piece of it, is to say like, no, you need to be legit. And it's very much tied to like my body and my work, and making sure, and it's really, really hard to like be in that space where I'm like, this is the I am, this is the things that I need, this is how I need to be in the world. And I want to serve everybody, I want to be available, and I want all those things. But if I'm not in my integrity, it all falls apart, not just me, but everything around me. Because very much when I do the things that are honoring my integrity, which is to say my words match my actions, which means I have to honor my own consent, and tell people when I'm not in a space where I can say yes, because that still happens, where I can't say no, I should say. Still happens to me. I get in spaces where I get decision fatigue, where I can't really, where I feel inclined to just say yes, and like really honoring those pieces and communicating with people. And that is the work of this lifetime, you know. And Aries is also a big piece of like leadership and being in a space of like coming above the thing, looking at it and being like, this is the direction that we're going in.
Right. Paving the way. If there is no path, you take out your machete and you make a path, right?
We'll figure it out. Yeah, we're going to go together. We're going to figure it out.
Right. And I think there's an empowerment piece there. And it kind of, hearing you talk reminds me of Lilith a little bit, right? Because there was like that theory about, and was it Channy that said that Lilith was the snake, or she was the apple? What was it? Something like that.
Yeah, talking to Eve, right?
So the temptation was really like the information that Lilith had, that was, you don't have to live like this, right? You don't have to be submissive. You don't have to, right? And so I kind of feel like it's interesting that you have Lilith. It's in your 8th house, which is a resource house also, right? This has to do with like other people's finances, who you merge with, who you have contracts with, and you have wounds here, right? So like you had said, though, teaching from the wounded place, right, then becomes a resource. And then you're almost acting like Lilith in this empowering way of saying, hey, you don't have to live like that, you know? There's that Aries initiatory energy of like, you know, I want to empower you to make your own decision and not be, you know, oppressed.
Yeah, and this kind of circles back to like your relationship with the divine, because I'm a Taoist at this point in my life. Your relationship with the divine is personal. My relationship is personal. My spirit guides are going to communicate with me in the ways that make sense for me. And I can give tools that you can forge your path. You can walk alongside me, but absolutely an expectation that people become empowered. Like personal empowerment is a huge part of my journey, because, you know, that's the thing about victimhood as well. When somebody makes you a victim, you can live in the space of, I am a victim. I am that I am comes from, you know, the Bible. And it is very powerful. I am a victim means that once the victimhood that is over, you're still a victim. So when you can come to this place of like, I am empowered, I am capable, I am someone who can trust themselves, like you start rewriting your story. And that's a huge piece for me. And then also saying to those who wronged me in the past, I forgive you, because I need to reclaim my moment in time right now and not be pissed at you for something that happened years ago, and be here and be present and conscious. And, you know, you don't actually have to mean it. If you say it enough, things will start shifting in your mindset, in your spirit, and you'll start integrating those pieces. And that is an important part of the journey, is to integrate your wounds and scars. I feel like a lot of folks are obsessed with staying pure, and it forces them to not integrate the hard pieces, the sticky parts, the parts that are crunchy that we don't want to deal with. And it really stagnates people. So to give space to be like, get empowered, you know, get the rage out, because like we live in a culture also where rage can't come out. And that is a part of sexuality and sexual energy, is to like feel the feelings. I love all of those pieces, and they were huge for my healing from like family wounds, from the abuser wounds, you know, to my numbing out phase when I did a bunch of drugs, and now and like, okay, the storm is over, and now I'm living my life on purpose.
I love that. Scorpio definitely is one of those signs that can hold on to something forever, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Right. I will hold on. So you just described sort of almost like a beautiful remedy for sort of dark Scorpio energy, right? Which is like never slow revenge, you know, right? Like,
oh yeah. I the more I look back on like why I've made the decisions I have, it comes from a place of like, fuck you. Give me a way to raise somebody. That was my childhood. Like, I'm gonna reclaim this. And this is me. I've redirected my anger into my job, because it becomes like rocket fuel, where I'm just like, I'm working on a spreadsheet to explain to people the map of volunteers for somebody who's being overly demanding over here, and I'm also being pulled to this direction. But I remember I'm really pissed off about things that are happening in the world. Like, people are losing rights to birth control and abortion. People are losing rights to healthcare, and it's falling apart. And I grab that. I understand where I fit into that system, because my troubles, the things I went through, come from the system, and I just redirect that anger, and I'm like, I'm gonna get this fucking spreadsheet done. It's gonna happen.
Make it into the mission.
Exactly.
Great Aries North Node.
So that's what I thought of too. Right?
Get me through the boring stuff, because I'm angry.
I like the word integration a lot, and the way that you use it, and how you talk about good and bad being almost like can intertwine in a healthy way, right? You're not ignoring the bad, and I feel like it's kind of a really nice way to talk about astrology. There's an integration of like who you are, the parts that you may have deemed bad, right, are not actually. And even if bad things have happened, maybe there's a way to, integrate all of it into who you are and who your acceptance is of yourself, right? It's not about like glossing over the harder parts.
And it's shadow work, right? It's that like these are the dark parts, don't look at them. And Scorpio is like, I want all of the shadows. I want that's all I care about. Don't even give me the other parts. Like I cannot stand chit chat. I cannot stand daily how are yous. I'm always just like, what's the work? What's happening under the surface? Let's dig. Like that's my zip code. So yeah, integrating those parts. Like I have parts I don't want to integrate, and I intentionally put myself in places where they're going to rise to the surface. And yes, integrating those pieces is really, really hard. And also it's empowering because you don't realize that those shadows are holding you back from happiness and fulfillment and relationships and connection. Like absolutely those things kept me from having community and long-lasting friendships and people I could be really real with.
Yeah, that's Scorpio rising. And then I have my moon in the 4th house of Aquarius, but it's still like your place of home, right? So like authenticity would feel like home. Well, you combine those and it becomes like an authentic lie detector. Like when you're around people, you're like, are you being real? Like, is that authentic? Right? Because that's what you crave, like, the crunchy pieces, like you said, the darker parts. I think Scorpio has a way of saying like the shadow work is really beautiful, right? Like if you look at it,
it's worth it because when you get to the other side, your life is going to experience this expansion that you didn't even know existed because you've been mad at your mom your whole life and it's stopping you from having that conversation with your partner or with your treating your kid in a way that doesn't pass down trauma. Like this affects the people that you love and interact with, coworkers, your partners, your friendships. Like shadow work is so important. Yeah.
I love shadow work. And in fact, it's one of the things that I love about astrology is that it's like a beacon. It is a flashlight that you're like, oh my, okay. Right? Like I do that, or that is a thing, that it's an ability to sort of look at and then call out. Right.
Yeah, comically roast almost, right? Like
yeah.
we talk about like a Virgo's shadow side being, perfectionism. Every Virgo in the room is like, it's some stuff we know about ourselves. It's just maybe that we're like, shut up, and I kind of like the idea of embracing that a little bit too, right? Laughing with it or
right. I have used astrology to understand my mother better, right? To understand also in general assholes better, I guess. When since either chart, it kind of gives you a different bird's eye view, right? It gives you a divine's perspective, right? Or maybe not a divine's perspective. It's my perspective on what the chart is. But still, it's like, this is why you hit this so hard, or why this is really hard for you, to let go. You feel like if you're not beating me up, that you're letting me off easy, or that I'm not going to be in heaven, or I'm not going to be in the space where you are, right? Like
your mom is at like Ram, right?
Yeah.
Ram at like,
my mom has an Aries Venus 9th house, which means that if to love me is to fight with me around topics of politics and religion, right? Like that is what that means in her chart. Now the shadow side is to do that, right? Just to lean into the fighting rather than that's a new initiative idea, Lacey. You know what I mean, right? Like, I see how that could fit in. She's on the shadow side of I must convert. I must convince, right? I must win the argument so that you know I love you, almost. Like, it's this interesting thing. So that's one of the things that I love about astrology. And so sex and intimacy, right?
Yeah.
I love looking at charts and being like, okay, for a moon, right? Your moon is in Scorpio. So the different signs rule the different body parts, right? Aries rules the head, Taurus, the neck, and it goes Gemini, Cancer, and it goes down the body. And so wherever a person's moon is, what sign it's in is where that person is likely to enjoy touch, right? Of course, consent, because you don't always know what's in that chart. So if Saturn's next to that moon, delays and restrictions, I do not want that moon to be interacted with, right? But like, for example, yours is in Scorpio, and that rules the genitals, right? But it also rules like vulnerability, right? Like, I want to go to the deeper places of a person, right? I want to investigate. I want to find out what makes you tick. So Scorpio, right? And so you would love probably other people to mine on you a little bit with consent to figure out what makes you tick, right?
Yeah.
What makes you tick is in your very first house, right, of investigation. You are supposed to figure out in this life what makes you tick, right? In particular, in the taboo, the things that people don't want to talk about, right? It's a part of your soul's body's mission to discover yourself, right? In the most vulnerable, shadow worky kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you say that, what I was thinking of is like, yes, I absolutely love when people actually want to get to know me and it's not a surface level conversation.
Right.
And it's far more attractive to me when people have done some of that work themselves. When it's not just like, oh my God, you do rope. I've never done rope before, but you do rope with me. And I'm like, well, you're putting me in a teacher place, actually, if that's how it is.
Yeah.
So I'm very attracted to people who've done a bit more of the work, who can talk about the nuances of a DS dynamic and understand it's not a rush to get into one. So that's very, very much it.
Yeah, that reminds me of this. Nietzsche, was it Nietzsche? There's a philosopher who talked about that he wants equals. He doesn't want like disciples. He'd rather you be an equal and you come at it with what you've discovered as well, so that you can interact. That's kind of what that reminds me of, which is super rad, right? Let's discuss about it. Oh, I love it. Well, we're about out our time. Got any last words? Any last promotional? This is what we're doing, events.
Yeah, so if you're in Portland, please check out sexpositiveportland.org. We have public classes as well as members-only events. We have this scary thing called the level system. It's really only meant to let you know what kind of event you're getting into and let you know that the people who are there have taken some consent classes, the same ones you have.
Yep.
So you're all speaking the same language. And then also we have chapters all over the United States, especially on the West Coast. So if you're in Seattle, LA, if you're in the 805, if you're in Salt Lake City, please check us out. We've got local chapters and community. Like, if I'm speaking your language, you're going to find more people who are speaking your language. Like, I'm executive director because we're all very much of the same mindset on this, about creating spaces that are consent focused and consent driven, where you can find community. And that is like such an important piece of finding, like, how do I do poly? How do I find my soulmate? How do I integrate? Because when you have people you can be real with, then you can show up in the right ways in those relationships. I'm also doing a tour with my bestie, Lady V. She's an incredible educator. We're headed down to the LA area. So we're stopping at Ashland. We're stopping in the Bay on the Central Coast. And then LA, I'll be doing leadership training with SPLA. She'll be at DomCom. So that's happening in May. So look out for that on sexpositiveworld.org. And we're planning an East Coast tour. We're going to start in Detroit and head across to New York and then swing back down. So that's something I'm really excited about, because it's actually going to be my first trip to New York. Oh, class on boundaries, pleasure, intersectionality, intro to sex positivity. And we also bring in speakers to teach classes. Everything is on a sliding scale because we care about equity. So moneyless access is always an option. And if you don't see it, tell me about it because we messed up.
Yeah.
And if you are the type of person who has the means, I'm always looking for donations for Sex Positive World. It keeps me in the game. It actually pays my salary because I am a full-time sex positive community builder. Sexpositiveworld.org/donate. Monthly donations keep me in the game long-term. One-time donations are also really appreciated.
Nice. Boy, that was like amazing. It's like you've said that before.
Yeah.
No, I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time.
I just feel vulnerable.
I should mention, Lady V and I are also in the process of writing a book based on a workshop that I've been working on with her. It's called Gender Affirming Intimacy, because many of us were taught that intimacy fits our gender and many of us don't fit those gender roles.
Yeah.
So the workshop is all about the type of touch and how to communicate with like people who are non-binary and trans bodies, people who do not necessarily identify as like 100% femme or 100% masculine.
Right.
And that book should be coming out at the end of the year.
That'll be really helpful because I know a lot of non-gender, non-binary peoples who feel like they have to be hypersexual, right? If you are, right, then there's this weird unspoken pressure that, oh, you must be like super hypersexual, but that's not the case, you know?
That's a lot of what I've brought to it. Lady V is a trans woman, so she's talking about what her experience has been, and she had a wife who's also trans. From that piece, when I started talking to more femme-presenting non-binary people, I realized that there was this big erasure of women who don't want to play woman, who want to be more expansive. So that's the piece I'm bringing in, and like fighting all the imposter syndrome that says like, oh, but it doesn't really matter. And every time I talk to other non-binary femmes, they're like, holy shit, it really matters. So
it does. I remember when my friend, she was going through her transition and I was like, you missed out on like slumber parties, right? I was like, let's do makeup at my house. You know what I mean? Like, let's give you this like super, you know, kind of girly, what you think of as girly experience and embrace that. And I want you to have that because that shit's awesome, you know? Like, it was really nice. It was really good. I loved it. And she felt hot, right? Like, ooh, I'm so sexy now, you know?
I love that. Seeing people like step into it and be like, oh, I can really express myself. I love that.
It was awesome. She looked amazing. It was great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us and telling us all about that. Please, everyone, check out the Sex Positive organization online, right?
Sexpositiveworld.org, sexpositiveportland.org, sexpositivelosangeles.org. We're all over the place.
There they are. I know we'll have to put links. I'll have to put links then.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thanks very much for joining us again for the last time. Thank you. Thank you. We will see you again. I know I will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Bye.